Now available in paperback and e-readers, Spinsterella Goth Girl Summer. Take a trip into the macabre world of goth modeling in the new millennium in this spooktacular Spinsterella story. Pick up your copy of Spinsterella Goth Girl Summer in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Actress Dakota Johnson says Hollywood is a bit of a mess. Now, Dakota Johnson is the daughter of actor Don Johnson, who starred in the 1980 series Miami Vice, and Melanie Griffith, the star of many box office hits from the 80s to the 90s, and as a girl who grew up in the entertainment business and has also starred in movies like the 50 Shades series and starred in a box office failure, Madam Web, she has seen all of the dysfunction that has gone on with Hollywood firsthand over the last 30 years. And as someone who has studied the entertainment industry for just as long, I can agree with Dakota Johnson that Hollywood is a bit of a mess right now. However, the mess that Hollywood is right now didn't start in Hollywood really. It started in Washington, D.C. around 1995 when studio executives lobbied Bill Clinton and the Republican Congress to pass the Telecom Act of 1996. Now, the Telecom Act of 1996 deregulated the entire media landscape here in America and made it where the federal regulations that stated that one person could only own one TV station, one radio station, one newspaper and magazine in a local area, it basically made it where that policy was no longer in place. And as that happened, what happened is the entire landscape of media changed as corporations began buying up local newspapers, local magazines, local TV stations, local radio stations, and started to consolidate them into their whole corporate business. And as those studios basically became under corporate ownership and they became corporatized, this basically made it where many Hollywood studio executives no longer were in charge of making their own decisions. Now, this also came at the same time that we started to see the internet boom start in the late 1990s, and as tech companies started to become building wealth in this country as the dot-com boom came on, this also led to an influx of people looking to enter the entertainment business, hoping to go out here and make profits. And as we had corporate America taking over Hollywood and had many of these tech people coming in looking to try to build an entertainment platform online with streaming services, this is what led to Hollywood going from being a business that was out here being able to make films and make them very quickly and effectively to entertain audiences to the chaos we have right now, because many of the studio executives and seasoned film executives were basically pushed out of their positions of power and replaced by many of these corporate executives who come from other industries and people from Silicon Valley. And as these tech nerds and accountants and other corporate types have taken over Hollywood, Hollywood has become a complete mess. And it's become a complete mess because all of these executives right now, they don't even understand how the film business works. And like Dakota Johnson has said, many of these people don't even watch movies because they're so busy working these 12 to 16-hour days. So they don't understand how story works on screen. But these people, all they see are the profits from the box office of these films. And what they want to do is go out here and make those big numbers as related to box office, not understanding how the film business works. And what these people in Hollywood these days don't understand is that films are stories about people, and the whole job of a filmmaker is to go out here and tell a story. No, these people don't understand this. No, all they're thinking about is looking to make and maximize their profits, and they look to commodify everything. And as they look to commodify everything as related to film, again, they're not thinking about the quality of the film based on the standards of film. No, what they want to do is go out here and mass produce a product and mass produce a product similar to the way they do on a factory assembly line. That's what they want to do with things. And what they want to do is do this on an assembly line, hoping to get a guaranteed result. That's what many of these tech people want to do, and many of these corporate types want to do with film. They want to make commercial properties that are guaranteed to do well at the box office. However, what has been happening is that these films really are not really made very well because they're not really made with the vision of a director who basically gets their money and their green light from an executive who has faith in them. No, what they do is go out here and again look to do everything through the same process they do in corporate America and Silicon Valley, which is to go out here and do everything by committee. But art is not done by committee. Art is a creative process, and when it comes to film, art is a collaborative creative process between people like that studio executive who basically again will greenlight this film based on how they believe the script is in terms of quality, and then give that script over to their director after they buy the script, and let that executive producer and director work on their vision and just leave those people alone. Let them make their film and leave them to make that film. That's how Hollywood used to do, because this business was always about risk. And again, that's why it led to the biggest rewards, because studio executives understood, yeah, I'm going to take a risk in making this movie. I'm going to take a risk in greenlighting this project. Yeah, I know it's a gamble, but the whole thing is if it pays off, it's going to pay off. But what's happened now due to the Telecom Act of 96 is that we've got all of these corporate people coming in. We've got all of these people coming in from Silicon Valley into entertainment. And as they come into from Silicon Valley and corporate America into entertainment, they're hoping to commodify entertainment. And as they hope to commodify entertainment, again, what they want is a guaranteed result. A guaranteed result where they can go out here and make films on an assembly line, similar to the way they used to do over at General Motors with their GM X-body cars, such as the Chevrolet Citation, the Pontiac Phoenix, the Buick Skylark, and the Olds Forenza. They want to make, again, an assembly line of products, again, and that's what they did with Kevin Feige and the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They made films coming off an assembly line, hoping that making the same films over and over, they will continue to get the same profits as related to those films, not understanding, just like the GM plant, with those X-body cars, you can't keep making the same thing because it becomes monotonous, and also it doesn't really lead to good quality control. No, when it comes to films, films are art, and with films being art, again, it's not, you cannot make them on an assembly line. But many of these people, again, these Hollywood type, these corporate types, and these Silicon Valley types, they want guaranteed box office results. They want guarantees as related to, again, numbers. And what they do is, because one movie is a hit, they make the same movies over and over. And that really doesn't lead to a satisfying experience for the audience, doesn't lead to a satisfying experience for the audience at all. No, it basically leads to an unsatisfying experience, because this is what leads to Hollywood being a mess, because Hollywood, again, as a business, has always been about creativity, and it's hard to be creative when you have such a rigid structure in place where everything is supposed to be a guaranteed formula. It's hard to be creative in that type of environment where you have these tech nerds and these bean counters basically trying to, again, make the same film to get the same results, and not understanding the whole concept of entertainment is that there's a law of diminishing returns. There's a law of diminishing returns because once you make a film, yeah, the first one will be great, but many studio executives understand, yeah, you may come back for a sequel, but by the third film, the audience starts to get tired of seeing the same stories over and over again, and the audience wants something different. They want something fresh. They want something exciting, because that's the whole nature of art. Art is not about giving you the same thing over and over, manufacturing things over and over again. No, people want to get stimulated by things that they see on screen. They want to see different stories from different walks of life. They want to see different types of stories. And Hollywood, sadly, because as it's gotten corporatized by Silicon Valley and corporate America, they're not about giving you something different. No, they want a guaranteed box office. They want to get guarantees. They want to do things, again, as related to money. And since these people don't actually watch these films, they don't see how boring a lot of these films are. I mean, as someone who was a fan of the MCU, Marvel Cinematic Universe, I really can say, as a person who is a novelist and a screenwriter and a comic book writer, it really does get boring to see those films, because they basically repeat themselves over and over again. And I really want to see something different as related to film. I get tired of seeing the same movies over and over, and reading the same books over and over. And this is a guy who again writes serialized stories. I write serialized stories like the Isa series, the Steam series, the John Haynes series, the Spinsterella books. I understand you got to mix it up and make it fun. You got to make it fun and make it fresh. And sometimes when you're a writer, you basically got to take time off from writing the same thing over and over and go do something different, like I did last year when I wrote Spinsterella Goth Girl Summer. You got to write something different because, again, for a creative person like myself, it's boring to do the same things over and over. You really want to, again, mix things up, do something different. I mean, that's what I did back in 2020 when I wrote the horror novel Eternal Night. That's what I did in 2013 when I wrote the women's novel The Thetas. That's when I also wrote the Spinsterella books in 2015. I'm always looking to mix it up. And again, mixing it up, sometimes, yeah, it means taking a risk, but that's all part of entertainment because people want something different. They want something unique. They want something fresh. And it's hard to get something fresh these days because Hollywood today, again, due to the corporatization by Silicon Valley and corporate America, due to the Telecom Act, they're not about taking risks anymore. But studio executives back in the day, they were about taking risks, and that's how we got many classics, because many film studios basically were looking to say, hey, I'll put $5 million on a movie like The Terminator, and that will eventually turned into a big franchise. That was a film they were looking to take a loss on because they said, we got some money. James Cameron want to make this movie. Here's $5 million. Go make a Terminator movie. They would take risks all the time, and again, take risks and calculated risks. They would say, okay, I'm going to let this director, he's got a script, he's got a vision, he can go make that movie. We'll go release it whenever, and if it turns out to be a hit, cool, but if not, okay. They understood, okay, this is a business of risk, and again, in order to get the rewards, you got to take risks. But today's Hollywood today, again, is a mess because they want everything so rigid. They want everything so structured. They want everything so safe. And this business has never been about safe. And Dakota Johnson understands this because, again, she sat there on a set of a movie like Madam Web, which was hot garbage. I mean, Madam Web was complete garbage because these people, they wanted to play it safe. They were using AI to write the scripts, not understanding films come from a screenwriter's imagination. They come from a director's vision. They come from actors being given something unique and fresh. I mean, when it comes down to writing, again, it comes off the page and it speaks to the audience. I mean, a part of good writing is when your characters speak to the audience, to the reader, and they can imagine and hear the characters' voices, where they can feel the motivation, they can get a sense of the psychology. I mean, there is so much more to writing as related to film, and again, so much more to films these days. Before this, again, many people, again, they want something fresh and unique. They want something, really cool, that really just taps your pulse and makes you say, hey, that film is cool. Like when I looked at 1967's Born Losers by Tom Laughlin. I mean, that film basically, again, resonated with me. And again, that was a film that set off a revolution as related to things in the 60s when Hollywood was stale. Same thing with Melvin Van Peebles' Sweetback. And those films would possibly never get any distribution in modern Hollywood because everything in modern Hollywood is all about, again, looking to commodify everything for a guaranteed result, but that may work in corporate America, but it doesn't work for film. No, the reason why so many films are bombing these days is because Hollywood, again, has this corporatized structure and doesn't have that creative structure that we had many years ago. I mean, many years ago, back in the day, many guys like James Cameron and Michael Bay, they would say, hey, I got this concept, and I want to, and they pitch the concept to the executive, and because the executive has a sense of what this guy is, he's good for the money, they'll go, okay, we'll greenlight that concept. Or a guy like me could pop in and say, hey, I got this whole concept, it's Ghostbusters meets Buffy the Vampire Slayer meets other things, and they would go with it. Or The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air meets Clueless, which is the pitch I would use for All About Nikki. That's the log line I would use. But the whole thing is that you could come in there with something, and just pitch it to people, and they would say, okay, this sounds like a good idea. I'll give you a green light, and it would be just on that executive's word. But these days, they have to go through about 10, 12 people who want to go out here and talk about DEI, talk about including all sorts of people, talk about political correctness, and talk about all sorts of stuff. And that basically takes the vision out of a creator's hands and makes it where it basically sucks all the energy out of it. I mean, you got to go out here and you could have a concept like I have, like what I had with John Haynes, where I talked about, again, Ghostbusters meets Buffy the Vampire Slayer meets Supernatural. Again, the temptation of John Haynes, that would possibly be the log line I would use. But the whole thing is, if I pitched that, they would want to, after they go out here and hear it, they would want to talk about how they want to add DEI, even though the whole book it has predominantly black characters and a multicultural cast. They want to put in political agendas. They want to try to look to appeal to all of these audiences instead of focusing on the story. I mean, that's what makes Hollywood a mess right now. Again, these people don't understand how the film business works, because the film business is really based on having some faith in people and trusting people, trusting that writer, trusting that director and executive producer as related to their vision, allowing them to just make their film and again put it in front of a test audience. And if it does well, you go out here and do the distribution. That's what you're going to focus on as related to your film. But Hollywood is a mess because, again, of the Telecom Act of 96. The Telecom Act of 96 basically ruined film and turned it into the corporate mess that we've got, where we have these decision makers who, again, coming from Silicon Valley, these tech nerds who don't know anything about films being about people. We have these corporate types who want to commodify everything and make everything all about profits, not understanding films are stories about people that connect people to the world, and that films are about connecting people to the world and telling stories about people. That's what makes films box office hits. This is not about selling merchandise. This is about telling stories about people. And if you tell a great story about people, that is what leads to the licensing and merchandising, and basically can lead to a film going out here and being a great film. That's what it does, is, again, telling those stories about people, telling stories about people and their stories that people can relate to and identify with and say, hey, that's me. That's what storytelling is all about, and Hollywood isn't about that right now because the people are too busy, who make movies are too busy working too many hours to sit down and watch a movie. And the decision makers, again, since they haven't watched movies, they don't understand that the whole film business is about people making films about people. Now, if you want to check out my screenplay books to see how I would write screenplays, you can check out my books All About Marilyn and my TV series book All About Nikki the Fabulous first season in paperback and Kindle format on Amazon.com right now. And if you want to see how I write stories which are like a movie in your mind, you can check out novels like The Temptation of John Haynes, Eternal Night, the Spinsterella books Spellbound, The Legendary Mad Matilda, and Spinsterella, and my Black Sorority novel, The Thetas, and my other book, A Recipe for Success, not to mention my books in the Isis, Esteem, and John Haynes series, and other Spinsterella books. You can find all those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them at other online booksellers like Draft Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And if you'd like to see me take the entertainment industry to the barbecue, you can drop drop a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Esteemed Season of the Witch Girl. The aspiring angel takes on a wicked teenage witch in this action-packed, all-new Esteemed series adventure. Pick up your copy of Esteemed Season of the Witch Girl in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers today. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Isis, Dark Incubus. The goddess next door gets enthralled in a romantic entanglement with an evil incubus in this all-new Isis series adventure. Get your copy of Isis, Dark Incubus in paperback and e-readers today. Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, A Thorn in My Side. The man who rules the world takes on an agent from the CIA from the Black Boule in this all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes' A Thorn in My Side in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.